Wait, I did actually miss this
Well,
about
let me say
Donald
something.
Trump. What did Donald Trump do?
If you want a boomer bash, watching Donald Trump on stage trying to dance to YMCA is all you really need for boomer bashing. But he spent about 30 minutes this week on stage
Thir-
at a rally just listening to music like he was at home with his bros. Like, hey guys, what about this jam? Hey, welcome back to Trailblaze. I'm Jamal Simmons.
and I'm Nayyera. Trailblaze, as you know, is about the America that we are becoming. It's the people, the politics and ideas, everything that's making it happen. We have gone into deep thoughts about voting demographics, voting rights, what's happening. And Jamal, so many things I want to talk to you about have happened in the last couple of days. I definitely want to chat with you about this kerfluffle that's going on with President Barack Obama, the first Black president, having talked directly to Black men. Seems to be an issue. I don't know what's on your mind today.
Yeah, look, we got to talk about that because I think that is something that is blowing up the interwebs, as they say. So I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about the strange things that are happening out on the campaign trail. One of the things that people have been talking about, which, we can get into all of this. We got to talk about the opportunity agenda for Black men, which is what the vice president put out this week. I want to talk about this sort of crazy thing about the enemy within. Did you see Donald Trump say that he thinks that the liberal lefties are actually more dangerous than China or Russia or the other enemies we might have? So we should talk about that. And then lastly, what about this thing with the multimedia campaigns that took place this week where we had Donald Trump on stage jamming out to music? Well, jamming out is kind of overstatement.
Okay, so
Donald Trump on stage with music.
I'm tracking the other topics that we talked about. And I also wanted to get into maybe some boomer bashing. I don't know what you can see because it's democracy messaging, but I did actually miss this about Donald Trump. What did Donald Trump do?
If you want a boomer bash, watching Donald Trump on stage trying to dance to YMCA is all you really need for boomer bashing. But he spent about 30 minutes this week on stage at a rally just listening to music like he was at home with his bros. Like, hey guys, what about this jam?
Okay, so Donald Trump continues to do rallies. They're rambling. None of his advisors can get him to talk about policy. I think we finally settled that this is no longer an election about policy issues and who's going to deliver the best ideas. There's even this whole thing about they both want a tax credit for childcare, or it's rather the child tax credit, but which echelon is it going to apply to? I feel like we're beyond that, but I'm not sure we're at that point where dancing on stage is helpful. So like, Donald doesn't know how to dance. What are you talking about?
I think it's a little bit of this.
I have missed a video.
It's the old man lip bite with like a kind of railroad train hand movement. It's kind of a weird thing. But you got to see it. I mean, listen, for those who haven't seen it, I hope you take a look at it.
He really just does whatever he feels like in the moment.
Whatever he feels like. This is like free flow, free thinking campaigning. And the problem is, like you said, he's not talking to 60 Minutes. He's not talking to any like mainstream media outlet, only doing the conservative media outlets. And then he's on stage supposedly doing a Q&A, and then he transitions from the Q&A with the audience because apparently he thought it was boring. And so he just kicks into some, Ave Maria, because Pavarotti is always a bigger crowd pleaser. Anyway, you got to see it. If you haven't seen
up
it,
there
it's
with
worthwhile.
arugula. Like, actually, no, Pavarotti to me is a little higher than the arugula issue, but right there with windsurfing. Like what? So,
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So then there's that.
We should not be surprised, right? Like we should not be surprised. And it is true that Donald Trump has disappeared in a way that Kamala Harris hasn't. Like she used to get the criticism for not doing mainstream media interviews when they just are doing this blitz of going out to media outlets where people actually are listening to something other than politics and news and are now realizing and connecting what we're experiencing in the election and our systems and connecting that back to realize. So I think going where the voters are is always a smart election turnout strategy. But Trump is not doing that. He's not doing the hard interviews. He's still doing the rallies, I guess, because they feel good. But now it's just another example how it's about him. It's not about a strategy. It's not about a consistent form of leadership. If he wants to stand there and just, hey, forget you all don't need to participate and talk or do anything. Forget about what you all have to say. Let's just stand here and listen to some random ass music.
Right. Let's
Okay,
just jam.
sure,
So,
sure.
so
But that's
here's
apparently
the
helping
connecting
with
thread.
black voters? Like, what?
Right. So, but here's the correcting. Well, he's not. Yeah. So
Okay.
here's the connecting thread. So then you have Vice President Harris, who's on stage, who's giving a speech also the same night. She's giving a speech talking to her crowd of voters. But what she does is then she says, let's go to the videotape, right? Let's go to the clips. And she starts playing crazy Trump clips at her rally so that people can understand exactly what it is they're running against. Because I think what they have figured out inside the campaign is that people don't actually see Donald Trump in full. We keep saying, watch the rallies, but nobody watches the rallies anymore because they're not really covered on mainstream television. And so only the faithful, the GOP faithful, get it. So Donald Trump can seem sort of rational and normal. And listen, this is where the Trump team is smart. They don't put him on 60 Minutes. They don't put him on mainstream TV because they don't want you to actually see and listen to Donald Trump. They don't want you to hear the crazy. So instead, he only saves that for his faithful at these rallies and on these conservative outlets. So Harris and the Harris campaign said, no. You don't get to hide out among your friends. Let's show everybody what you're doing in the dark. And they put Donald Trump on screen at a rally for everybody to see it. I think the more that the American people see what Donald Trump is really up to, the more it's going to matter.
Well, because we have forgotten, right, what the first few months of the first Trump presidency were like. And that's before there actually was even this Project 2025 plan, right? They have consistently, conservatives and Republicans in the United States and overseas, they will tell you what they're going to do. It's very straightforward. It's not, they will tell you there is a plan with 140 former Trump administration officials, right? They will tell you. People who identify, I guess, as liberal, like, oh, no, that could never happen. That could never happen in America. No, nobody would ever say that. So yes, bad stuff did happen in the first 4 years. It was a very erratic, very anxiety-ridden experience for Americans on top of COVID, all of this. But the way it gets discussed and platformed and packaged makes, because those are normal ways to share information, makes the whole thing seem normal. But this is my question. Part of what media and journalists in particular were trying to correct for was the open sharing of platforming of Trump rallies, because they weren't getting fact check. It was essentially free airtime and like, oh, let's see what crazy thing he says next. And it ended up being free message sharing. So we're now the opposite problem right now, which is that people aren't seeing what Trump is actually doing, 20 days before the election.
Right. No, it's absolutely right. And so what's happening is Trump is being protected from himself, right? He's being protected from all the things that he says. And so he can communicate to his followers in a very specific way on the channels that they watch and they listen to, without having the rest of us be exposed to it, which is something that is, I think, in the end, working to his advantage. Yeah. Exactly. He actually doesn't want mass market attention this time.
No, and that's right. That's it right there. He doesn't want the mass market attention. He needs to hold his 48%, get some folks on the margins. And I want to talk about the margins, because we've done a lot of this, which is different than marginalized people, right? That's like margins and marginalized people are different. All right, you were going to say, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no. I just want, before we go there, I did want to get to what Harris was playing on the stage, right? Yes. Which is she does these events. She puts up the screen and she says, "Here's what Donald Trump is saying that you're missing." And I took some quotes because I wanted to get it from the NBC story. And he says, "I always say we have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries." Trump added that a smart president can handle his adversaries. And he said, when asked about the upcoming election, Trump tried to tamp down those fears that chaos could again ensue. So what he says is, not from the side that votes from Trump, whether or not we're going to have violence. But then he says, I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. Any unrest, Trump said, should be very easily handled by, if necessary, the National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen. And when they ask him, he goes, the thing that's tougher to handle are these lunatics that we have inside, like Adam Schiff, right? So he's not talking about immigrants, which is what, which is what people said. He's not talking about Antifa, the thing that he always sort of drummed up. He's talking about very specific elected officials who have tried to hold him accountable. And what do people think when Donald Trump starts going after elected officials, when he starts going after progressive groups, when he starts going after people who by name or by identity or by group and by interest, what do people think is next? What does Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, think is next, who went out and tried to defend this the other day with Jake Tapper? He's coming after Republicans next, because if you disagree with him, it doesn't matter what your affiliation is. When Mike Pence was in the Capitol, his vice president, and people were saying, hang Mike Pence outside, and they told Donald Trump they were coming for Mike Pence, he said, so what? Right?
And
he doesn't care.
Right? Those are not the problematic people. Let's be clear. Those people did not get the National Guard called out on them. In fact, we had the National Guard of DC, which, here's a technical issue, has to be activated by the executive branch, federal executive branch. They cannot get activated by a governor, because there is no governor for the city of DC. They're the closest ones. The head of the National Guard, under sworn testimony, said he was contemplating disobeying orders and effectively putting everybody's career on the line to say, all right, guys, we need to go and we need to get there and calm this ish down. Luckily, Maryland and Virginia, 2 different states, got there first, because the White House and the Pentagon, under political influence, did not activate the National Guard for almost the entire day. People have forgotten. We had the National Guard
I'll tell you what
sleeping
happened
in the halls of Congress.
Yeah, I can tell you what happened, because we have a friend who was in the National Guard, the DC National Guard, and I know exactly what happened, which was that they got asked to basically assemble, right? So not technically called up, but they got asked to assemble. They all went to their stations. They all got dressed, right? They all went in battle-ready uniform, but they had to just sit there and wait for the order, right? So the idea was, once the order happened, they could go like that. Yep. But that's not but it didn't happen for a long time. So which supports your point, which is like, they didn't get the federal order. So the DC National Guard was basically sitting on its hands while they were rioting and attacking the Capitol, attacking police officers, and defecating, shitting in the halls of Congress.